way more powerful than anything that we can control. Now, locally, for instance, in the Beijing Games, allegedly, because the ruling party in China doesn't always like to disclose these things, allegedly they fired up rockets into the air to do the reverse of what cloud seeding is often, to seed them for the clouds which are nearly rain clouds to make them rain clouds, which is basically putting in condensation nuclei. So you need little microparticles for the raindrops to form, and sometimes you can fire substances up into the, let's say, dry ice in the old days. So you can fire them up into the clouds and make clouds which are nearly rain clouds. You can't make something out of nothing. It's got to be nearly a rain cloud and make it rain. Well, in the Beijing Games, they did the reverse because they didn't want it during I think it was the opening. I can't remember the opening ceremony. I think it was the opening ceremony. They didn't want it to rain, funnily enough, and it didn't rain. So we don't know whether it's true. But in China, they do use this a lot to try to help some of their provinces which have got droughts and etc. So the Chinese are in some ways, the communism is working there. In the West, if we're going to have cloud seeding, oh my God, the amount of regulations and the worries and the amount of 10, 20-year case study projects. Are we hampering the environment? The Chinese go, we need it. We need the rain now, and they do it.
And they do it, yeah.
That's one of the advantages of having, a totalitarian society. Sometimes it works for your benefit. But whether it's working, I don't know. Yeah.
The question there as well, then, that connects with this is who controls the sky? Because again, if we have China doing this over certain areas, I would say that this would absolutely then influence the whole system, as it were, because this might, in the end, means that some of the rain, if you will, and if you follow my train of thought, is taken from potentially other parts of the world. It attracts moist, it creates rain over one area, and another area might be without, and they might experience drought. So again, we have kind of back to this problem: who can regulate this? Who shall oversee and control all of this, if it's allowed or not? What do you think, James?
Well, if we had a cap and trade scheme, we had a one world government, we wouldn't have that problem, would we?
Oh, God.
So, yeah, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. Yes, you're definitely right. Now, they do cloud seeding, and I can't go too much in depth there around here. There happens to be cloud seeding locally. And one of the main concerns, and it is a true concern, and you pointed out as well, by the green groups here, and the green groups have got their place. I don't disagree with that. It's just sometimes the extremism. But I do agree. I'm fully green myself. Don't get me wrong, audience. I do believe in green. They're just getting it right. Is the rain that they're taking and putting in one place, of course, removing from another? Well, one of the edicts here, rightfully so, is that it's rain clouds that would go out to sea. So it's rain that would not be, on any land mass, which is a fair point. So that's what they try to do anyway, to minimize, any, secondary effects of removing that water from the atmosphere.
Okay. You mentioned a little bit basically about yourself there, and your basic overview that you agree with the green approach to living your life, etc., and so forth. But what are some of the true, environmental problems that you see out there as well? Because I see that there's a lot of those happening and taking place, but we hear very little about those. We can even mention the other controversy about these new green light bulbs that we're now given, and even the European Union have now decided that the old standard regular Edison glow light bulb is not allowed anymore, and everyone should now have these mercury-filled low-energy light bulbs. And if you drop one of these things, you have to leave the room for at least half an hour, because otherwise you can be experiencing mercury poisoning. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I didn't like the fact that I was being forced to change. And also, I didn't really agree with the initial idea that it was to do with CO2. Now, being efficient and green, if there's a light bulb out there that is a better product, this, it has to be on a product-by-product basis. You can't say, green technologies are good or they're bad, depending on the product.
Of course.
If you have a light bulb that will poison you, and people drop light bulbs all the time, and if this is giving you mercury poisoning, which is a heavy metal and one of the worst forms of poison you can get, then that's not an improvement. Do you know what I mean? So perhaps they shouldn't be used. I don't know about our local ones. I think sometimes they're based around fluorescence as well. I don't know, but as opposed to the old tungsten light bulb, which is a filament, of course. If it's an improvement and it's got longer life, yes. But I looked in my local shop, And they're mass producing the green ones now, and they're forcing you actually.
Yes.
There's only a few, old tungstens left. And I looked at the price and the number of hours. It was the same. Actually, slightly more expensive to get the green ones. As in, okay, it lasts, 4 or 5 times longer, but the price was about 8, 9 times more. So I was thinking, well, I'm a bit annoyed that I'm being forced to buy them, and I don't like the white light. I know they say there's a warm version, but I don't find it very warm. The actual warm glow of tungsten is quite pleasant. But anyway, that's just, I guess.
Well, I was actually glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the things I see as well. That I don't like the light from the new light bulbs, and it gives me a headache almost, because it has that fluorescent vibe to it, and I like the old.
Yeah, it's cold.
Very cold. Absolutely. So from that point of view, we can even mention that has to do with the environment as well, the environment that human beings are in. And, we want to create a pleasant environment for ourselves as well, and the quality of all these things play into the picture as well, because so many times I think that the human being as well is always left out of the debate, out of the conversation, if you will, and the fact that we have needs as well. The simple fact that we up here in the north have to heat our houses, things like this. We can't just turn off the heat here. We would die. And these some of these questions are not being brought up. Very obvious points. And so again, then in my view, the debate is very unbalanced, James. That's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're talking about light bulbs and whether it's nice and a feeling of warmth in our house, but it can go to a sort of a grander topic of, giving cheap energy to Africans, or allowing Brazilians or people in Indonesia to grow not grow cash crops, but food crops primarily, and maybe cash crops so they can afford it, as opposed to being forced to their land taken from them in the first place from a corporation, or making cash crops, which is highly volatile and they can't feed themselves. So you're right, and we are seen, as a parasite. Perhaps in the extremist movement, we are viewed as a parasite and secondary. So you've got to find, dare I say, a holistic, a solution that can fit both, minimizing our impact on the environment, and also making sure that we have an environment we want to be in, whether it be having a nice warm glow from our light.
Yes, yes, absolutely, very, very good point. Let's spend some time talking a little bit about ClimateGate as well. Then I guess one of the points that we can begin discussing a little bit has to do with the medieval warm period, or the medieval climate optimum. This seems to be one of the things that were meddled in regards to the emails leaked from the CRU and things like this. How much have you been looking into ClimateGate overall? Have you read some of the emails, or have you read mostly summaries in terms of ClimateGate? Again, there's so much data there, and I haven't myself had time to keep up with all the things that are being discovered every day, I guess, now in terms of the information in the emails. What about you, James?
Yeah, well, I haven't done a complete study where I would actually then write a script, but of course I have been following it quite avidly, and I've been looking at people's comments and their reviews, because it is, of course, a mass of emails. It was, compressed 61 megabytes of emails, and the whole concept of being a hack. Well, I very much doubt it's a hack. What it is, and we're all waiting for it with bated breath, is the more likely situation then as a whistleblower, and for him to come out, and that will be huge, because hacked, of course, means illegal, whereas whistleblowing is actually legal. So it actually turns the whole concept of this may be some dodgy underhand dealings done by the Climate Research Unit to being illegal doings. A willful prevention of the freedom of information that was been requested from them, changing of code, and I saw a snippet of code where they had a fudge factor in, which even the coder, and I do coding, I do IT programming, and you have their comments which you put by your lines of logic, and he even said this is a bit dodgy, this is, but I'm putting it in, and it's hampering the data set. And there's the whole concept of high decline, where the recent history of the tree rings just didn't fit with the actual. We would call it the actual temperature record, the surface temperature record, so they just got rid of it. Mixing more than one data set, and taking the parts, splicing the parts which you find most favorable to show this huge hockey stick upturn in the last century. And all of this stuff, this is not news for people who are perhaps skeptical about this whole CO2 thing. It's not news. I mean, this has all been analyzed statistically, and this has all been looked at, and people have done alternative bits of evidence,